Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Today in the rLounge, when it comes to weddings, it's not always about having your cake and eating it too, but sometimes it's exactly that. The sweetest victories come from the smallest acts of defiance. Mother-in-law canceled my wedding cake out of spite, so I got married without her and sent her a burnt cupcake. I announced my engagement to my boyfriend of 3 years to both our families over dinner. My parents were thrilled, asking about dates. His mom, however, looked like she'd just swallowed something sour. While everyone else was congratulating us, she just sat there with a tight smile before finally saying, "Don't you think you're moving a bit too fast?" We began wedding planning almost immediately. I had Pinterest boards and ideas ready to go. We settled on a June wedding date, about 6 months away. Not rushed by any means, but his mom acted like we'd announced we were eloping tomorrow. She insisted on being involved in every single decision, which might have been sweet if she wasn't so obviously disapproving of everything. "That venue is too expensive. That dress makes you look boxy. June is hurricane season, you know. Why not wait another year?" The real bombshell dropped when we were visiting venues. His mom asked to speak to me privately while my fiance was talking to the coordinator about parking options. I thought maybe she was finally warming up to me. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I don't think you're good enough for my son. He's just infatuated, and I'm not going to pretend to be happy about this rushed wedding." The cake tasting was a nightmare. His mom showed up uninvited and proceeded to dismiss every flavor I liked. "He's always hated lemon," she said when I mentioned it was my favorite. "He's allergic to almonds," she claimed, though I'd seen him eat almond croissants countless times. "Chocolate is too messy for a wedding," she insisted when the baker suggested it as an option. The bakery owner kept glancing between us, nearly uncomfortable with the tension. Eventually, we settled on a 3-tier vanilla and raspberry cake with buttercream frosting. Not my first choice, but I was too exhausted to fight anymore. A few weeks passed, and I realized I hadn't received any confirmation emails from the bakery. When I called to check, the receptionist seemed confused and told me they had no order under my name or wedding date. I explained about the tasting and gave her my future mother-in-law's name. Maybe it had been filed under her contact information. Her tone changed, and she said she'd get the owner. The owner came on the line and awkwardly explained that my future mother-in-law had canceled our order 2 weeks ago. She had told them we were postponing the wedding and requested a full refund to her credit card. I was livid. I texted her with screenshots that the bakery owner had sent me of the cancellation. She claimed there must have been a mistake and that she was just trying to find us a better deal elsewhere. When I pressed her, she finally admitted she thought we were rushing into marriage and believed she was doing us a favor by forcing us to slow down. I forwarded the entire exchange to my fiance, expecting him to finally stand up to her. Instead, he suggested we just find another bakery and not make this a bigger deal than it was. That's when I lost it. I called him and made it clear this wasn't about cake. It was about respect and boundaries. His mother had deliberately sabotaged our wedding plans and lied about it, and he was still making excuses for her. He pushed back, accusing me of always finding issues with his mom and asking why I was making him choose. I hung up and spent the next 3 days wondering if I was making a huge mistake. Maybe his mom was right. Maybe we were rushing. Not because we were ready for marriage, but because I wasn't ready to deal with his mother for the rest of my life. On the 3rd day, he showed up at my apartment. He admitted that his mom was wrong, but asked if we could just move past it without a big confrontation, find another bakery, and focus on our day. I invited him in, but made it clear I wasn't backing down. I told him I couldn't marry someone who couldn't stand up for me. This wasn't about cake. It was about the fact that his mother had actively tried to sabotage our wedding, and he was still putting her feelings ahead of mine. He admitted he'd always struggled to stand up to his mom. She'd raised him alone after his dad left, and he felt pretty perpetually indebted to her. But he also acknowledged that her behavior toward me had crossed a line. And he did. He went to her house the next day and confronted her about the cake and her general attitude toward me and our wedding. According to him, she broke down crying, claiming she was being replaced and pushed out of her son's life. She refused to apologize for the cake incident, instead blaming me for turning her son against her. When he told me about the conversation, something clicked for both of us. This wasn't going to get better. His mother wasn't going to suddenly accept me in our marriage, and if we kept trying to include her in our wedding, she'd find other ways to sabotage it. We decided to revamp our wedding plans completely. We canceled the big venue, losing our deposit, but whatever, and decided to have a small ceremony with just close friends in my family. We didn't tell his family about the new plans. They'd lost the privilege of attending. We thought we were being discreet, but somehow his mom found out. A friend of a friend mentioned our new plans, not realizing it was supposed to be secret. Suddenly, we were bombarded with calls and texts from his mother. "How dare you exclude me?" and never acknowledged what she'd done wrong. After she threatened to stop the wedding one way or another, My fiance blocked her number. We thought that would be the end of it, but we were wrong. A week later, one of our new vendors forwarded us an email they'd received. His mother had created an email address similar to mine and was pretending to be me to get the details about our wedding. We immediately implemented passwords with all our vendors and warned them about potential sabotage. 2 weeks before the wedding, his mom showed up at my apartment with his father in tow, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the whole situation. I refused to let them in. I told her that she wasn't welcome at our wedding and had made it clear she didn't support us. Despite all the drama, our wedding day was perfect. We had a small ceremony with about 30 guests, close friends and my family. The new cake was even better than the original would have been. My fiancé seemed lighter somehow. The morning after our wedding, we woke up to missed calls and nasty messages from his mother and other family members. They were devastated and furious about being excluded and demanded we have another ceremony with them present. I went to a local bakery and asked for a single cupcake. I specifically requested that they burn it and use the most garish, unappetizing frosting they could manage. The next day, I personally delivered a small box to my mother-in-law's house. When she opened the door, her expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then quickly to anger. She demanded to know what I wanted. I didn't say a word, just handed her the box with a sweet smile and waited as she opened it. Inside was the burnt cupcake with a note that read, "You tried to ruin our day, but we still got our cake and ate it too." Her face was priceless. Shock, rage, and the dawning realization that her manipulation had failed completely. I turned and walked away without another word as she screamed obscenities from her doorstep. My husband laughed for a solid 5 minutes when I told him what I'd done. We left for our honeymoon the next day, both of us blocking his entire family on all platforms. She didn't just dislike the dress or complain about the cake, she canceled your actual wedding cake order behind your back. That's not concern, that's straight up sabotage. And your fiancé trying to minimize it at first? I get that he was stuck in the fog of guilt and obligation, but she's been grooming him with his whole life. But that doesn't make it okay. Her behavior was manipulative, controlling, and honestly kind of obsessive. She didn't want to be included. She wanted to keep him tethered to her like he was still 12 years old, and she was the only woman who mattered. Update 1. It's been about 6 weeks since my last post, and wow, a lot has happened. First, thank you to everyone who commented and messaged me. I didn't expect my petty revenge story to blow up like it did. For those asking if the burnt cupcake was worth it, absolutely, 10 out of 10, would deliver again. So the burnt cupcake incident triggered an absolute meltdown from my mother-in-law. The day after I delivered it, she sent a group text to the entire family, including some of my husband's cousins I've never even met, claiming I assaulted her with a disgusting prank and that I was mentally unstable. She left out the part where she canceled our wedding cake and tried to sabotage our entire wedding, of course. My husband had been keeping things low-key, mostly to avoid turning our wedding into a family circus. But once he realized his mom was spinning her own version of events to make herself the victim, he snapped. He decided it was time to set the record straight, thoroughly. He spent that evening building a Dropbox folder labeled Receipts and Regret. It had folders, one with the email of her canceling the cake, another with screenshots of the fake email account she created pretending to be me, a third with her messages threatening to ruin the wedding, and even a bonus folder titled Sabotage Greatest Hits for all the passive-aggressive texts she'd sent over the months. Then he shared the link in the family group chat with one line. "Before you come at us with opinions, read this. I love my wife, and I won't let anyone treat her like garbage, family or not." The fallout was wild. A few relatives deleted their messages and went silent. Some offered awkward apologies. One aunt replied with, "Well, that explains a lot." Others doubled down, saying it was still wrong to air dirty laundry and that mothers only act out of love. The most unexpected responses came from his childhood babysitter, who messaged to say, "Honestly, I always thought your mom was a little off. Glad someone finally said it." Just when things started to quiet down, mother-in-law showed up unannounced somewhere she definitely shouldn't have, causing a scene. Someone had to step in and remove her. We filed the report, but there wasn't much that could be done yet, so we began documenting everything. We spoke with a lawyer about getting a restraining order. He said to keep collecting evidence. We're now meeting with a lawyer to explore our options. My husband is grieving the version of his mother he thought he knew. We're both exhausted. Update 2, 4 months later. After we filed for a restraining order, word got back to mother-in-law, and she immediately retaliated by spreading false claims about us. She accused us of being unstable and lying about everything that had happened. She even created a private online group filled with dramatic posts painting herself as the victim and my husband as someone who had been manipulated and turned against her. Around that time, we received a call from someone who close to her, asking us to reconsider and saying she was trying to change. When our court date arrived, mother-in-law showed up looking perfectly put together in a conservative dress and pearl earrings. Gone was the screaming woman who'd been terrorizing us for months. In her place was a soft-spoken, teary-eyed mother who just wanted to reconnect with her beloved son. The judge reviewed our evidence: security footage, text messages, emails, workplace incident report, and testimonies from neighbors who'd seen her car. Mother-in-law's defense was basically that she was emotionally distraught about being excluded from our wedding and had reacted poorly, but meant no harm. The judge wasn't buying it. He granted a temporary restraining order for 90 days, ordering mother-in-law to stay at least 500 feet away from us, our home, and our workplaces. She was also prohibited from contacting us directly or through third parties. Mother-in-law's face when the order was granted was a mixture of shock and rage. I think she genuinely believed her act would work. As we left the courthouse, she stared daggers at me but didn't approach or speak to us. Then we had another hearing for a permanent restraining order, when she violated the first one literally in less than 24 hours. Mother-in-law didn't even show up, sending her lawyer instead. The tracking device was the smoking gun. The judge granted a 3-year restraining order, the maximum allowed in our state. 5 days later, we moved to a new state without telling anyone from my husband's family. We moved into our new home and finally felt safe. To celebrate, we hired a photographer to retake our wedding photos and hung them in our living room. Later, my husband received an email from a family member. It was an apology, not on mother-in-law's behalf, but from someone who acknowledged enabling her behavior and expressed support without overstepping. For our 6-month anniversary, we ordered a replica of the original wedding cake mother-in-law had canceled. We cut into it together and marked the moment as a quiet victory. The burnt cupcake had started it all, but we ended it on our terms, with peace, boundaries, and cake. Her courtroom performance, pearl earrings, crocodile tears and all, was textbook Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. She banked on the judge falling for the grieving mother routine and instead walked away with a restraining order. And the fact that she violated the order within 24 hours? Entitlement on steroids. I'm so glad the judge saw through her act and gave you both the protection you clearly needed. Have you ever dealt with a family member who tried to sabotage something important to you? Share your stories with us below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.